Our expectation now at WorkOS is everybody codes. What we have seen, by and large, is that people are thrilled by this. It's like playing with Legos as a kid, but now I have infinite Legos, and I can make my own Legos,
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Agents Hour. Joining us now, we have Michael Grinich, founder of WorkOS. Michael, welcome to Agents Hour.
What's going on? Good to see you, Shane. Hey, Abhi.
Michael, for those that don't know, if they haven't been paying attention, tell us a little bit about WorkOS and tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Well, WorkOS is mostly a podcast and newsletter sponsorship system where we take our investment dollars, and you've probably seen us having sponsored videos on stuff from Theo or Lenny's newsletter, or Acquired podcast. We have a lot of this stuff so people see it. But what we do is we help developers essentially take their product and grow faster. We help them add enterprise features, things like authentication for enterprise customers, user management, permissions, roles, encryption, logging. Essentially all the stuff if you're a SaaS builder and you want to add to your app to go get bigger customers. We build all of that as a software platform. So it's kind of like Stripe for enterprise features. That's what we say. And we do it for a bunch of developers getting started, new companies that are getting founded and starting to grow faster. And then also for OpenAI and Anthropic and Cursor and a bunch of other of the fast-growing AI companies. So we're infrastructure that's underneath all of those businesses.
We use it.
Yeah,
so.
I was going to say, if you really want to see it, just go to, Mastra.ai, create an account on the platform, and you'll be using WorkOS. So a few things I did want to talk to you about, because I've been following you on X, as everyone else probably should. And I see you announced AI native company gets thrown around a lot. On May 19th, we're showing what it actually means inside WorkOS. Agent shipping PRs, secure sandboxes, Slack orchestration, GTM intelligence, MCP, and other tools in production. Can you tell us about this event?
A few months ago, I think earlier this year, maybe January, February, I started this new team within the company called the Applied AI team. And the idea was to go into a bunch of different areas where we weren't yet seeing the accelerated impact of AI and figure out why. What can we build? What can we automate? How can we help people do their jobs better? How can we accelerate? Because we were already seeing it in software engineering, as we all have been, for the last year or two. But in these other areas, we hadn't seen it as much. And we were just kind of curious, what was up? And so we took some of our most AI-pilled engineers on the team, took a few of them, and started embedding them in these functions. And we've built a bunch of different stuff in this. And so this event is really a showcase of this, different team members that have built and led these different areas. One area is our internal coding system. We have this autonomous agent harness that we call Horizon. And what Horizon does is it's kind of similar to what Ramp has built with Ramp Inspect or Stripe Minions. It's a sandbox. It also has connectivity to internal services via MCP, so it can get a lot of context in, everything from our project management solution, like Linear, to GitHub, to Salesforce, actually, even other types of data, Datadog, stuff like that. And it allows developers to kick off autonomously in the background tasks that otherwise they would have to create a branch, try to think about what to build, open it in Cursor, start writing code. Instead, you can actually kick this off from many different places, from Slack. You can kick it off from a Linear ticket. And because of all this context, this coding agent, this harness, it actually is really specific to our form of development and execution tied into all of our systems. And so we had already seen the acceleration with, Cursor background agents, or we use Devin, we use other things internally, but we decided to build our own to take it just a step further. So that's one of the things that we're going to show off that our team's pretty excited about. But we've also actually been building this on the go-to-market side, which I think is probably the more novel and discussed areas.
I have some questions on that, but before I do, one quick question on Devin versus your internal thing. Because we use Devin. Devin's really good at a lot of things. We like Devin. But I'm curious, where were the gains? Because I'm assuming because of you, it's your style, it's your context, you feel like there was gains for you to build it yourself. I think folks are weighing these options. We know a lot of teams that are trying to build their own internal coding agents. And so I think it's on the top of a lot of people's mind.
I think one thing at a high level is we're just obsessed with creating the best possible outcome for our team and the company here. And so simply using an off-the-shelf solution just doesn't give us the level of control or fidelity to explore that. With our own system with Horizon, we're trying different harness designs. We're trying even different harness structures. We have versions that use Claude under the hood. We have versions that have used OpenCode, where people are experimenting with Pi. We have some people on our team that are running their own OpenClaw instances to try to debug stuff and see how that works. We've actually separated also, in terms of our internal systems, the sandboxing environment to go run these services and do the actual kind of harness execution from the context layer. So you have a separate Horizon MCP server that's really an amalgamation of all of the different internal services we have. And you can just take that and add it to Codex or add it to Claude or whatever you want. You can add it to Linear and just chat with it through that system. We love Devin. I think what they've been building is really incredible. And we'll even use Devin for like doing data analysis, things like that. It's outside of the software engineering lifecycle. But it just became so clear to me that there was this enormous shift happening in how we write code and how we build systems. And so we didn't want to wait for there to be a convergence and stabilization in commercial services before we could start experiencing what the frontier of this is from our own products. So it's really not like A versus B. It's like A and B together. And we also use cursor background agents. We use Codex. I mean, we're using like our Claude build is crazy. We're using everything across the board.
I guess we can go into the GTM side.
Can you go more into that, specifically with your strategy on podcasts and influencers?
Yeah, so our strategy really is not spray and pray. It's not actually a super wide aperture. I would say there's some amount of a long tail of very niche developer newsletters that we like to go, sponsor, like Pointer and TLDR and, these. I mean, you call them niche, but they actually have tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of subscribers. What we instead have tried to do is find people that I think would represent our brand well, that we can learn a lot from and go do a deeper partnership with. Like as an example, we have sponsored the Acquired podcast, which has like over 1 million listeners. I think it's the number one podcast, certainly number one business podcast that's out there. And not only do we sponsor that, but we also do, events with them. Like we did an event about a month ago where Ben and David, the hosts of Acquired, interviewed Boris Cherny, who's the creator of Claude Code from Anthropic. And we produced that. We hosted it with about 75 founders or so in San Francisco. It was like a special event we put together. I would say like we like to be pretty focused in that. We've done stuff with Gergely from the Pragmatic Engineer. He has a pretty amazing audience. And we like to go kind of like deep on those types of relationships and partnerships with folks. We really try to find people that can also give us product feedback. Theo is someone that I've known for a while that we sponsored for a bit. And in addition to us being a sponsor of Theo's channel, he actually gives us a bunch of great product feedback. Like we power the auth inside of T3 Chat. So it's a very kind of symbiotic relationship. I think it's maybe the thing that can only exist in the kind of tech Silicon Valley inside baseball world.
Does the process for doing the GTM motions change now that you have Horizon? How's onboarding those people into this system? Like, how does that go?
So our whole company is pretty AI pilled. We actually this week we're doing our first all company Claude Day. We're just kind of naming it Claude Day. People are using a lot of different services, but it's kind of a one-day internal hackathon for people to build anything and everything. We have, non-technical people now with GitHub accounts that are pushing code in different services. We have an internal system that we've built that's like a deployment target for vibe coded products. You can have stable infrastructure. It's really easy for agents to work with and get logs in and out of, but not have to throw it on Replit or throw it on something that doesn't have the same security layer that we have internally. So it's definitely impacting, across the board. What I'm seeing on the marketing front is actually our marketing team is finding it faster to analyze data, to actually like go deep on impact of certain activities, to scale certain things as well, to go broader. And then it helps a lot for creative. We spend a lot of time and energy around brand. Like brand design is like very, very important and sensitive to us. And for a while, the models were like very much like not good at our level of quality and polish on the visual experience for brand. Like the kind of visual slop was like, we were like, oh, we're never going to touch that. But we actually took it as a challenge. And we said to our brand team, like, hey, you all go find these tools and find ways to actually make them more impactful and productive and how to steer them. And with new models from like Midjourney, as well as the new GPT image models, the ChatGPT image models, they're pretty incredible what you can get out of them if you know how to steer it properly. It's kind of like playing a different instrument. We also have an internal system that's this really intelligence engine around go-to-market. So not just marketing, but like our sales pipeline, lead enrichment, prospecting, searching for great customers, detecting when folks sign up and we should really spend a lot of time on them. These are things that like in the past companies would manually review. You'd have like deal review meetings. You'd have a team of people sitting in a room together. You'd have like managers talking to sales reps about all this stuff. We've just automated a ton of this. And it doesn't remove work. It actually gives us more work to do. This is kind of the crazy thing, or we're accelerating on top of it. In addition to us building this product, this infrastructure product for all these AI companies, it feels a bit like what we're stumbling into is a new way of working, like actually a new way that companies will operate. And that's what we're very excited to share and kind of share the lessons from what we've just experienced so far.
So Sebastian has a question here. It's kind of related to what you're just talking about. Do you have some kind of company policy, or is it just people experimenting what they're curious about? I know a lot of companies that we talk to are wondering, like, what should you let your employees do? Should you have limits? Should you say, use your best judgment? But how do you think about that?
We haven't found our limits yet. If there are limits, we haven't set them or found them yet. I think instead what we found is that it requires like a mindset shift around executing this way. And our expectation now at WorkOS is everybody codes. It's something we now have as one of our operating principles. We interview people for it when they come to the company, even, entry level or super experienced. Doesn't matter if you're coming in essentially like a director level or a new grad. Everybody codes. We look for fluency around building things. There can be different levels of it. An infrastructure engineer that's like hands-on, optimizing systems is very different than someone who's building prototypes or, front-end experiences. But the expectation is you're leaning into this and doing a lot with it across the organization. What we have seen by and large is that people are like thrilled by this. When I had said that to the company, like, I want to make this an operating principle that everybody at the company codes. I'm an engineer. I love building stuff. It's the whole thing that got me into startups and software, is just making things. It's so much fun. It's like playing with Legos as a kid, but now I have like infinite Legos and I can make my own Legos, Not everybody is like that, not everyone grew up that way or thinks about their career in that way. And so I actually was expecting more pushback. I was like, when I was going to suggest that, like, pitchforks and torches, no, like we can't do that. It was not the case at all. Everybody was like, yeah, actually, we're already doing that. Actually, now that we have that as a premise of the company, here's the things that we need from an infrastructure layer to accelerate it even more. It's been very exciting to see how fast folks have gravitated towards it. I suspect it's going to be this like sea change across all organizations. And just with this Applied AI showcase, what we're finding is there's certain categories of folks in the company that just need, I don't even say like nudging. They're already curious and interested. They just need a bit more tooling or infrastructure built for them to get over the bump.
Related to that, so Sebastian has a good question as a follow-up. Do you have some kind of mentoring internally, or are people mostly self-taught in terms of AI tools? And maybe these types of events are ways you try to encourage people to, to kind of lean into it a bit more.
Yeah, the amazing thing about these systems, like, Claude or whatever, is you can ask it to teach you. In the past, like if you open Salesforce and you're like, I don't know how to use Salesforce, you're stuck. You got to go to a conference, you got to read a book, you got to click around.
It's like some weird article you find on Reddit or something.
You're screwed. It's like the incantations to understand the system is only reserved for like the wizards in the Citadel or something. Like you're just stuck. You can't use it. But with Claude, you can sit down. You just be like, I've never written a line of code in my life. Teach me how to program. Teach me how to build stuff. All it requires is the attitude that you want to learn, and that is your responsibility, your high agency to learn. And so actually the number one failing I find across folks, or I shouldn't even say failing, the place where people get stuck, you got to break through, is them saying, the way I learn stuff is by people teaching me. The way I learn stuff is by someone coming in as, I need a teacher, I need an educator, I need a workshop, I need someone else to give me the knowledge. And when people say agency, I think this is like the bit, actually. It's like you need to have the curiosity to go out and find that new thing and be uncomfortable and try something and learn. There's no, teacher for every single bit of knowledge in the world. Like you'll have to go figure it out on your own, especially in these areas that are changing. And so instead, what we do is look for that agency and try to bring it out of people. Say, no, there's no coach, there's no teacher. We can pair you with people. You can build stuff together. You can learn from each other, but everyone has to commit to the learning step in it, And I think for people that are naturally curious, when that turns on in their brain, they thrive. They're like, wait, what? Now there's no barrier to me learning anything? They'll just, run through walls. And I can tell you the stuff that they build and come up with is just breathtaking to see. Every single week, I'm like, you did what with what? Whoa. And we're just seeing that become like a pattern of the business.
Some of these new people may have better ideas than some of us who are jaded for doing this our past ways, right? So they're coming in fresh with new eyes on a lot of different problems.
Yeah.
Of the teams that have been public about their internal platforms that they're building, I would say all of them have stellar engineering cultures and stellar engineers. Do you recommend everybody take on this, this task of building internal system like this? Or is it only for the people who have, money and the right people?
I mentioned Stripe. There's the stuff that Ramp has done around Inspect. Spotify also built this thing called Honk. There's another dozen or so. I actually had a bunch of companies, friends text me saying, oh, we're building something like that at all these different companies. So I think there's more people experimenting and building this than publicly people see today. It's just most people aren't writing about it. I don't know. I don't really know how to give guidance to others. For me, for this company, we build software for other software businesses. Like we are kind of the term software factory has been around. We've been a software factory since the beginning. That's the stuff going out the door to our customers as software. We're not using software to produce something else. We're producing bits. And so being as close as we can at WorkOS to the frontier of how software engineering is working is just a critical piece for our culture and in our perspective as a business. It's probably not the case, if you're building some other type of product in market. But I do think you need to be incorporating this way of working into your internal system. So, you need to be using tools like Claude or Cursor or Codex or Devon or OpenCode. You need to be finding ways to think about this like autonomous agentic workflow. It doesn't need to become your entire life, your entire world. Eventually it could be like the majority of the PRs at the company ships, but maybe it's not the majority of the sensitive code that's like should absolutely be like hand rolled and hand reviewed. But I think to not lean into this in some way is going to be a liability. And it's also just not that fun. Like in my mind, this is like the golden era of builders. There's so much cool stuff to make right now. And so to some level of retention, if you want to just keep really great engineers or attract people, I think you got to be doing this too. We've had so many people that reached out to me that want to come work at WorkOS after I published that post, kind of shared our investments in it. And we're staffing up like a significant team to really go deep on building this across the whole company.
Yeah, I can see why. People want to feel like they are on the leading edge of where things are going. And Michael, I know you only have a couple more minutes, so one more quick question. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up your TSAI Demo Day talk. For those that don't know, Michael was on
Sick
stage.
Talk.
It was a great talk.
My talk, that was not really a demo. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, that's okay. We got a little pushback, but everyone gave you a pass because it was such a dang good talk.
Yeah, it was really good.
So for those that haven't seen it, can you give us the little summary of what the talk was? Give a little teaser for people to go out and watch the whole thing.
The title of the talk was Death of UI. And really it distills this observation I've had around the transition from different phases of computing, from like the early mainframe days where computers were the size of a room to PCs to touch devices like phones, and now cloud, browser, internet, and AI really being this dissolving of the UI. The idea that you don't go and look at the UI and then take action, but you kind of describe your action, you describe your intent, and then the UI is downstream of that. It's generative, and we see that in the form of chat today, like these chat interfaces with Claude and ChatGPT and other places. But I think it's kind of happening everywhere. There's a pretty interesting tweet with Brian Chesky talking about the Airbnb app, saying like, I don't think chat's the interface for it. He was immediately challenged by people that are like, I would love to be able to just chat with Airbnb and not have to go through this crazy UI thing. So I think this transition is occurring. I don't know what's on the other side of it exactly. It's not like a chat text to markdown representation is the best for everything. But this idea of user interfaces being dynamic and generative and kind of at the disposal of the intent, like downstream of that, I think that's a major, major shift that's happening in like human computer interaction. And we're all in it building stuff, so we're not really talking about it as much. We're just trying to make agents that are effective. We're just trying to ship products at scale. We're just trying to build businesses. But right under our nose, I think this enormous shift has happened. And that's really what the talk is about.
All right, Michael. Well, we really appreciate you coming on Agents Hour. For those who want to see what Michael's saying, it's Grinich on X.
I'm also curious for folks watching this, if you have questions or thoughts or things of any of the talk or anything like that, just tweet at me. Mostly what I learn is from people like you guys and then people online. So if you have comments or interests, please reach out.
Like, share, and subscribe.
And follow us on X.
And tell your friends.
And their friends.
We're not begging.
Well, maybe a little bit.
Subscribe to Agents Hour every Monday, noon Pacific.